Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another interview for the Art of Sherlock Holmes. It's a very special one today because this is our first interview for the second volume, the USA-wide edition. And today we have Aaron Schwartz on the line. So Aaron, where are you dialing in from?
I am from Pembroke Pines, Florida, in the United States. I'm actually just west of Fort Lauderdale, which is probably the more popular city. And so I've been here, South Florida native, pretty much my whole life. And I will hopefully be around for a while in this area. I love it here. The weather's great most of the year. It gets a little hot, but you can't complain.
Fantastic. Yeah, for these interviews, I've been wearing my West Palm Beach T-shirt because I'm actually dialing into you from North London, which is famously rainy and cold, but today is beautifully sunny. So maybe you're influencing the weather for me, Aaron.
I will take credit for that.
Fantastic. How did you first get into art?
Well, my mom kind of, got me a lot of tools and materials when I was a little kid, and I'll always credit her for something that I was interested in that she was doing, and I would try to copy her. And so I've been really doing art for as long as I can remember. In high school, that was one of my major focuses, and I had some really great teachers in high school and in college that sort of opened up my mind to new ideas of what art could be and how to kind of create things that no one else has created. Try to be as creative and original as possible. And it's the world needs art. This is such a great release of stress and energy, and a way to connect with people that sometimes you wouldn't talk to, but it's with today's social media and everything. It's a fantastic way to get your point across.
Yeah, I must admit that one of the highlights of this project for me has been when Phil shows me the art for the first time. We must give a shout out to Phil Growick. So Phil has conceived and curated this project. So his idea was to bring artists and authors together by getting an artist to create a piece of work from a Sherlock Holmes story. And we'll come back to that a bit later. But I wanted to jump straight into your art, Aaron, because I have to say, when you sent me the pieces today to talk through, I was kind of a bit blown away. And I can't wait to hear what inspired these different pieces and how you put them together. So this first one, what's this one called, and what's it about?
This is In God We Trust, which is a phrase that our country has as a motto. It's printed on all our currency here in the United States. I guess sort of as a background to my art, it's something I've kind of created on a technique of using ink and solvents on photographs. So I'm able to interact, different media and ideas, in this case, money and the symbol of the United States flag. This was created a little while back, but my thought behind this is obviously the overwhelming need or feel that our country is based on or driven by money, and it continues to hold true today, and pretty much in most circles of the world, people can relate to this concept. But it was more about the idea of how I could transform these photographs that I took, and I took these specifically for this piece, taking photos of money, just random images, and then I'll take these chemical solvents where you see the white areas are me erasing the photo essentially with a chemical that eats into the emulsion, and I scrape away some of the images. I try to leave some when I can where it makes sense. And then the colors I add using, pretty much office supplies, Sharpie markers, ink, highlighters. I tend to apply this with the chemical to sort of give it a bit of a watercolor sort of a look. But I feel like the images that I create are not quite as important as how they're created. And this being a technique that I don't think anyone else is using, I sort of stumbled on it by accident. And I feel like that's really what I kind of want to show people, is that, you know, you can use materials in different ways and create things that you didn't expect to do. This is sort of being a happy accident. But this is one of the pieces that I did where I finally was like, okay, now I can try and use this process and incorporate two different images at the same time to sort of reinvent how you look at one image or the other.
I think this is one of those pieces, and in an interview earlier with wonderful West Palm artist called Vicky Siegel, one of the pieces she showed me, she explained how the painting was constructed and the fact that it looks very, very different in real life. I can imagine that if I was in front of this piece and then took 10 steps back, I would see a very, very different image than close up to it. Because it, you know, when I first saw this, I just could not get my head around how you'd done it. And now you've explained the technique, it makes a total sense, but it almost looks like a jigsaw.
Right, well, I work on these photos. Each little tile is an individual photo. I work on them each one at a time because it can get pretty messy. So I'll have to work on one at a time in my little, you know, in a little area, but then have the rest of the piece kind of like mapped out a little bit of ahead of time. In this piece, not so much, because you know, it being a flag that's waving, you can kind of create your own path of how it's waving. You don't really need to follow a specific thing like you would in a portrait, where you really do have to map out features of a person's face so that the proportion looks right. But I'll work on one photo at a time. And in this case, I used all different kinds of photos, 8x10s, 4x6, 5x7, to kind of just, like you said, put together a mosaic or a jigsaw of these photos once I'm completed each one.
I think that works really, really well for a piece like this, because I think if you're using identical and symmetrical perfect sizes in there, it kind of wouldn't work. It would be almost like it would look like a roadway that's been painted or something, or a wall. Whereas this kind of breaks it up really nicely.
I thank you for noticing. I definitely agree with you.
Let's jump on to this one. Very different. This is, for me, this is where the sizes did work very, very well, because it kind of needed to be like that. But you broke it up with lots of interesting images in here. But then again, if I lean back and look at it from further back, then the face comes out a lot more, and the overall structure come closer, it starts to break up again. Really fascinating piece. What's this one about?
Well, this I just did this past year. It sort of touches on, you know, what I feel is a big issue we have in the United States about gun violence and being bombarded by, you know, images of attack, or, you know, whether it's social media, the news, the politics, you know, pretty much everything that we see and hear every day, we're bombarded. This is called Prey, spelled P-R-E-Y. It's about vulnerability, and I feel like, you know, when you are praying, you are at your most vulnerable. This is, you know, I used images of guns and ammunition, and, you know, like I said, images of propaganda, news clippings. You even see pictures of other countries' flags in there. Our current president, you know, different things that we are essentially attacked by every day, whether we realize it or not. We're all vulnerable to being, I guess, manipulated, or in some cases hacked, or brainwashed, and not really, you know, kind of having full control of what we see and hear every day makes us vulnerable, and it makes us the prey. And that's sort of what I was trying to imply with this. And, you know, it got a little bit more, it really sort of hit home a lot when there was all these attacks, especially there was one right here, which you're probably familiar with, as the Parkland school shooting, which is actually in our county here in Florida. And that was something that kind of jump-started this piece to be finished. It took me a very long time. This is, I think, 81 photos of different images that I put together. And again, painting on them one by one, sort of got me, and it put me in a space for a couple of months where I was just kind of, trying to figure out ways to get my image across in a way that people understand. And I still don't know if I've accomplished that, but I do feel I am happy with the piece, and I feel like it is what I wanted to represent, and hopefully other people will see that as well.
Yeah, I'm not an art expert, but I would use the word cool for the first one. I would use the word powerful for this one. It really hit me, this particular image. It's quite challenging for us in the UK to understand and associate the situation with firearms in the US, because we just don't have them here. So it's not something that's in our news very often, other than when we get coverage from the US. If we move on to the next one, complete change of tack here, and this feels very upbeat to me. This one, this feels very bouncy and happy. Have I got that right?
Yes, and this is the quintessential sample of my art. I am now even more and more involved in doing paintings of musicians. One of my major influences and inspirations on a day-to-day basis when I do my art is music. I love live improvisational music, jazz music, funk music, instrumental stuff that and this particular painting is of Wynton Marsalis, who is an amazing trumpeter, and this is all done on photos of trumpets and sheet music, and the art that I'm working on nowadays are of guitar players and other musicians, that DJs, all kinds of stuff that you would incorporate into like a jazz club scene or a current music festival type of environment. And this is what I really love to do. I do a little bit of the political stuff here, or some more controversial stuff every now and then when the feeling hits me. But to create art every day and to do these type of pieces are what I really look forward to waking up and doing every day.
And in terms of the musical connection, are there some unusual places where the art has ended up being?
No. I mean, I've got friends that own bars and clubs, and I actually have thought about putting them in there. But I like having these in my home. I'll show them at art shows, and I'll obviously I sell all the art that I do, or I try to sell all the art that I do. But this is mostly a passion of mine that I don't need to sell the art to keep creating more. I'll just keep doing it because I love this technique that I'm using, and I'm excited to see how the chemicals just react with a new photo that I get. The processing of photos is changing, ever changing. Every time I go to the lab and I get my photos back, it's a little bit different how they interact with these chemicals that I use. So I'm actually excited to see what kind of colors they're changing into. I mean, I don't even know what they're gonna do until I start working with a new batch of photos, and that's kind of an exciting part in its own. But I crank the music up loud, and I just sit in my zone, and I'm doing this art, so I feel like I'm improvising with the music as well.
That's fantastic. I have to say, when I first saw this piece that you sent through, I could imagine myself sitting in a bar with a nice glass of bourbon in Memphis, listening to some jazz, and look up on the wall and see this up on the wall. That was kind of where I thought it would be. It would look wonderful. Let's jump into number 4. This for me, this is a little scary, a little dark, actually. But I don't know if that's a Joker from Batman type thing that's jumped out at me from this one. But tell me a bit about this piece.
Well, this one is called Wild Card, and it was just another one of my sort of processes trying to get everyday imagery, like in this case, some playing cards, and creating a joker or a sort of a gesture in the cards, as if the luck of the draw, or maybe just the idea of luck in general. But yeah, I guess there is a little bit of an eerie element to it because of the sinister smile and the dark eyes, and Yeah, I kind of like that. I kind of like that people see different things. And you're not the first person that's mentioned it in that way, but I do also hear other people, say things that I'm not expecting that are new. And I love that about all my pieces, really. People kind of say, I like this one the best. I like this one the best. And they'll all give me different reasons as to why. And I think that's, that in itself is great.
I think that I'd have a feeling that this one was watching me if it was on the wall in my room.
Yeah, I actually have a couple that do that. My wife wants me to take them off the wall before too long. After after she's seen the new stuff that I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's take the eyes off the wall and put something else up there that's not always looking at me.
Fantastic. Well, let's get on to the subject of the day, the art of Sherlock Holmes. So, as we discussed before, the concept conceived by Phil Growick, painting a piece of art from a Sherlock Holmes story. And here we have your piece, which we're only showing a little bit of, Aaron, because we want to keep the mystique and the fun of what the art looks like right up to the last moment for the release of this edition in the fall. But tell me a little bit about the process that you went through, because it's fascinating for me. You've got a story, you've got a storyline, and you've got to create a piece of art from it.
Yes, well, I don't know if you want me to say the name of the story and what it's about, but I was given a certain set of ideas, or actually I'd say from the story, I got a certain set of ideas that I sort of bounced off of Phil, and we came up with this idea of a figure on top of a background of different Egyptian hieroglyphics. Because I felt like that was what I took from the story that I read. And I was excited to do this. I mean, Sherlock Holmes is a legendary character that you can imagine in, today's age. You see all kinds of movies that are reproduced and trying to capture, who he was or what, people nowadays think of the detective. But, when I was a kid, this was pretty much everything that had to do with about mystery and detectives was Sherlock Holmes. And now you have 1,000 characters that would, try to be like him on various TV shows or movies. But this was exciting for me.
Fantastic. I have to say, it's a really stunning piece of art. It's absolutely gorgeous. I would definitely have this on my wall any day of the week. We should mention that the first edition of the Art of Sherlock Holmes, which is the West Palm Beach edition. The book is pretty much complete. We have 15 artists and 15 authors in the book, and it's up there for pre-order through Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all the other good kind of bookstores. All of the art is coming together on the 9th of May at a high-end gallery called the Anne Norton Sculpture Gardens in West Palm Beach. And I'm going to be popping over about a week later to see the art, because there's some amazing, absolutely amazing pieces in there. On the 25th of May, we'll be cutting live to the gallery to meet the artists and see the art from Undershaw, which is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote the Sherlock Holmes stories, his former home. So we're going to have a big event there at the school. And we're going to be cutting live using Zoom, which is the technology that we're using today for the interview. So this is part of a very big project. West Palm Beach, the first one, USA edition, which Aaron, you're one of the first artists to complete their work for the second edition, and we'll be into a global edition next year. It's been absolutely fantastic talking to you today. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day, and look forward to catching up with you when I'm in West Palm in May.
Great, thank you. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Cheers.